Sup Shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands and welcome to an SPRX where today we're checking out the latest EP from an act named LUNA The Gents. This EP titled Second Life Part 1. And if we switch over to here, we're on our way to YouTube, primarily because this EP has not been released yet. It's due for release, as I understand it, on January the 26th of 2026, so this video will be released on that day. I'm listening through each of these tracks in advance. The first of these titled Perfect Day. We're going to listen through each of these tracks from start till finish, and we're going to hear what we think. Let's do it. What do we got?
Pack your bags and follow me. Summer's calling, I feel free. I wanna see, I wanna breathe.
I'm liking how nice and positive it is from this get-go.
No, I don't care what others say. Guess it's time to run away. And today's the perfect day. Oh, let's live for the moment where the sun beams on our skin. Just you and me, here and now. Up and away on a perfect day. Up and away, what a perfect day. Up and away on a perfect day. Up and away, what a perfect day. Up and away.
I mean, it's charming, isn't it?
It's a perfect day. There's adventure in the air. You can take me anywhere while the wind blows in our hair. Cell phones off, no one to me. The whole world lays at our feet. Here and now, you and me. Oh, let's live for the moment where the sun beams on our skin. Just you and me, here and now. Up and away on a perfect day. Up and away, what a perfect day. Up and away on a perfect day. Up and away, what a perfect day.
Just a little bit.
Up and away on a perfect day.
And modulation.
Away, what a perfect day. Up and away on a perfect day. Up and away, what a perfect day. Up and away on a perfect day. Up and away, what a perfect day. Up and away on a perfect day. Up and away, what a perfect day. Up and away. It's a perfect day.
Incredibly charming. What I was going to say before the guitar solo came in, was that I just like the laughing, just how comfortable we are on the microphone. I think that's really cool. But yeah, let's talk about this track. So each of the tracks in this review that we listen through are going to have their own sort of mini conclusion before the final sort of overall kind of like thoughts at the end. I'm going to break down each of these tracks as we go along. But first of all, what do we think this track is about? Perfect Day, track number 1. I mean, like, at face value, it seems pretty straightforward. They're discussing their perfect day, about living in the moment, about not sort of like getting lost with their cell phones, you know, like turning them off, throwing them away, just appreciating being the outside, going for a drive, you know, exploring nature, etc., sleeping next to the bears, you know, just having fun. And I think that's something that everyone can get around, especially if you're in a part of the world where, you know, it is summertime, or, you know, alternatively, you know, like, just going on anywhere on travel. I like the joy and charisma from the vocals. I think that they're fantastic. You really need to be able to sell this. It's not just that we've got really sort of competent, sort of like head and chest voice with very comfortable vocal technique. We've got some vibrato, we have backing vocals and sort of harmonies as well. We also allow, I think, some of the other band members to come in to do their vocal parts as well. And it just kind of sounds like everyone is singing together. And there's something immensely powerful about that. It really does sort of indicate we are using the most of our resources that we have within our capacity. Structurally, I think the track works really neatly with some of various verses and chorus, and again, like a guitar solo section. And we're not like overplaying it, where we're kind of like just providing an alternate lead, I think, to the main vocalist in that regard, was kind of mirroring or kind of like pushing forward with the country aesthetic with the tone of it. This is kind of thing going on with the drums there, which I think sort of propels us forward and adds a sense of pace and movement to it. I think that works really well again with the country stylings of some of the solo sections. And the kind of tremolo or sort of vibrato that we're going on the kind of lead guitar tone, the way it kind of warbles. And I like that some of the guitar notes we have in the rhythm section, they kind of lead into, or the lead section, they lead into the next kind of perfect day part. We repeat these perfect day parts to kind of enhance the catchiness, I suppose, of the situation with it. And in other sections, we kind of have a pause for, you know, the singer to say, oh, it's the perfect day, I presume, Luna, just to sort of like speak it, you know, like to be able to tell it, you know, we're allowing the music to breathe. I think like the kind of dun da da dun da da dun kind of like picking of the guitar parts in the background as well are really charming. There it follows a similar rhythmical sort of process as the drums, sort of snare patterns. And then when we go into that key change in the later section there, I like that we're switching up a major second or like a tone or two. I would say it's a tone, right? It just is quite uplifting. It can be done in a way which is quite cheesy if we're unaware of what we're doing, but Luna and the Gents are very proficient in how they approach their musicality and the composition, so there's absolutely no risk of that. I think that the use of the earnest kind of analog or acoustic elements within it, not sort of relying on sort of synthetic textures, just kind of like makes it seem a bit more sort of grounded, which is cool. And I think that having that extra kind of lead guitar solo a bit over the last chorus is really cool. She just further adds a bit of kind of extra oomph to it before we pan ourselves out. I mean, it's 2 minutes 45, right? In that 2 to 4 minute sort of sweet spot. And it makes great use of that real estate without overstaying its welcome. Great use of sort of bends and slidey parts with the lead guitars as well. I like the varied use of techniques from the perspective, especially as a sub lead there, not taking the listener's attention for granted. And there's like a kind of a cool response between some of the lead parts and the harmonica that we have here, adding, again, like a great sort of brightness and kind of sizzle and zazz to it, a bit of excitement with the tone there, with the people that are kind of like harmonizing on the major third with that. Just a cool response with different sub leads before the vocals. It's just great attention to detail, or between vocal parts, I suppose, in that little break. And the organ that we have there with a similar kind of like oscillating effect to the lead guitar tone, it's just a nice sort of extra paddish kind of element within the mix. It just supplies a nice bit of sort of like higher mids and or mid section, and just adds a bit of body and depth to it. Makes it seem just a little bit extra. Thematically, I think like the chord progressions in the chorus are inherently major because of the joy we feel about having this time, you know, the perfect day. It wouldn't make sense for it to be minor oriented. There are a few sort of twists and turns with some of the minor turns, or sort of like kind of ways we kind of mess with the bass lines in those kind of transitory sections. But ultimately, it's major keyed, which makes sense considering the subject matter. And I think the instruments use the brightness of those and the focus on the mids to uppers with a sort of a well-rounded bass end or low end. It's a good sort of like, it makes sense harmonically and sort of musically. And it's a tight performance without no out of place. It's really proficient. Studio recording, mixing, and mastering. And you're going to hear me say some of the stuff, I suppose, for each of the different tracks, although I'll try not to belabor the point. There was just a little bit of digital artificing with the actual audio file here. I can hear that maybe it was a different sort of audio format. It just sounds like we may have tried to convert like 96 to 48 or 41 or something like that. I'm just not sure about the file we used. Beyond that, just for the video itself, I think the mixing and mastering in general was really stunning. The recording quality of it was tight. The instruments were well captured within their element. Vocals didn't need any assistance of post. They just had a great sort of presence with the compression, sort of reverb tails and stuff like that. I liked ultimately a lot of what was going on within this. I've got no real complaints about how it was approached there. I look forward to hearing how the rest of the EP kind of stacks up to it. We've actually got Je ne peux pas t'oublier. I cannot forget you, I think, if I'm not mistaken, in French. Let's do it. Official video, track number 2. Now, I think I've actually reviewed this before in the old house.
Non, je ne peux pas t'oublier. Même si
Phenomenal tone to the double bass.
je l'essayais, mon cœur est près de toi. si près de toi. Oui, je dois m'en aller, même si je voulais rester. Quand même, je t'aime très fort. Je t'aime très fort.
I wish my French was better.
Non, je ne peux pas t'oublier, même si je l'essayais. Mon cœur est près de toi, si près de toi. Est-ce que tu crois que je puisse
Stunning.
t'oublier? Non, je ne peux pas, mais je dois m'en aller.
Very articulate solo there.
Non, je ne peux pas t'oublier, même si je l'essayais. Mon cœur est près de toi, si près de toi. Mon cœur
Wonderful.
est près de toi, si près de toi.
I mean, there's an inherent sadness in it. I've got a lot of holes in my understanding of French. I kind of get what it's about, but I think even if I didn't, I'd still appreciate my time with it. It's just a really beautiful song. Because that's Je ne peux pas t'oublier, which I think is I cannot forget you, if I'm not mistaken. It seems to be about someone that they love, and you get the impression that their heart is like prey or something like that. And it's just the entire track itself kind of lends credence to just the value of not putting all your eggs in one basket. Because if we compare it to Perfect Day, the previous track, it's a very different experience. Vocally, wonderfully, proficient. Again, we show a different side to ourselves than what we had with Perfect Day, where I think we're showing a bit more sort of vulnerability. And I think that's really important, because if you're going to have an EP titled Second Life, part one, it kind of culminates in wanting to know that it's not just one-dimensional, I suppose, that you can explore the depth of the musicians involved with creating it. And this is something we have here. Not that it's a particularly unheard of sort of thing to discuss, someone who's unforgettable, the experience you had with them, but nevertheless being something that is very interesting to listen to, primarily because if you enjoyed A Perfect Day, you'll enjoy this. And that kind of like that twist in the tale is really sort of intriguing, just going from that to that. So kind of makes you wonder what happened to The Perfect Day. So vocally incredibly compelling. I like the earnestness of the approach and the expression. I think that's the value of the audiovisual experience as well, actually seeing these people play their instruments and seeing, again, Luna perform like this. It's wonderful. It's really good. So Structurally, this track is a bit longer than Perfect Day, but I think it makes great use of that time. There's a wonderfully, again, an articulate guitar solo, but there's great representation from the various double bass, drum, and key elements as well. And we just explore ourselves at a more gentle pace, which makes sense considering the lounge jazz setting there, the more sort of like earnest approach to the overall performance itself. It's a lot quieter than the previous one. It's a lot less outspoken. I think that just kind of makes it a bit more believable. You can kind of join the dots. I like the quietness of the keys there. We have call and response occasionally with the vocals, but we're very much a supportive element within the mix. And I think that's sensible there. You can do a lot with keys, but we have the guitars doing a lot of the technical stuff, especially in their solo section there. But even then, we can tell that they're pocketing and that they're capable of far more fancy stuff. It's just that the individual band members understand that they're not there to outplay LUNA, they're there to work alongside them. They're telling their story on stage. It's meant to be a very sort of like intimate thing. I like how proficient, I've said professional, I like how well the double bass is played there. Playing a fretless instrument from personal experience is incredibly difficult. And so to be able to not only play the bass well, but also kind of roll with a pulse that mirrors a lot of the most sort of foundational elements of the drum parts, the chord notes, but also where to stick those additional sort of transitory notes in to kind of go between chord with the guitar parts. It's just wonderful there. It's knowing to be minimalist again to provide more room for the story to be told, but not underplaying it. And what I mean by underplaying it is, and we could have made it simpler, but it's just finding that balance, And what I sort of want to mention is that in terms of minimalism, this is far more so than Perfect Day, because you have a piece where you have occasional vocal harmonies, but very, very subtle ones. This is more LUNA's story being told here. It's not needing additional parts to kind of overcomplicate it. When we do have the guitar parts coming a bit later on there, especially that solo section, we're rolling with arpeggios that make sense in regards to existing chord progressions, and we're maybe further highlighting certain notes or extensions that are applicable with any sort of sevenths that resolve around there or, kind of like consist. But it's almost like a little bit of sizzle with some of the kind of dynamic kind of picking we have there, some of the unisons, but it's also that we still keep a sense of rhythm and flow with a lot of the drum components. And there's occasional chromatics that are enhanced by the use of a bend to elicit tension, like the heartstrings are being pulled. I think the part that we had around 205 where things go bam, 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 bam is tremendous because, again, structurally, we have these verses and choruses and solo sections, but like there's like different tails on certain parts. And having the whole band kind of build up and then allow LUNA to have space to go bam, 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 da, da, bam, bam. It's just a lot of sort of dramatic tension that could have just not have been there and it would have been a less impactful experience. But they knew to have that variety there, especially again going up to the solo section, as I understand they do afterwards. I could be wrong. But I think overall, again, this is a more conservative performance or composition than Perfect Day. Thematically, I feel that the modest approach to both the performance itself as well as the chords revolving around the minors makes sense considering the subject matter. The occasional chromatic lends a sort of a credence or romanticism with the extension it belies, and so kind of left with that feeling of being at the bar afterwards, kind of wondering what happened. I didn't speak about the drums, but the drums are far more low-key in this one with the triplet flow that I think works well with the slow dance kind of aesthetic they're trying to provide here. We're just allowing ourselves to sort of dance with ourselves because we're not sure if we have that person anymore. And the occasional sort of like tom fills are less, I think, is important. Mostly as sort of a transitional element to sort of focus, unless it's like the dom, 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 dom parts. It's mostly to have the rides kind of guide us through with crash accents and kicks and snares to kind of elevate when required. I just keep listening back to that guitar solo and it's just a wonderful kind of like performance. I like the vibrato and some of the finicky kind of little bits as well. It's really clever music. It's great to be able to have that sort of flexibility because the other things are giving it room. Studio production wise, there isn't the digital artificing that I mentioned with Perfect Day, so I assume it's related to the video rather than the audio itself. I'm considering the display here. The album is going to sound awesome. I love the fullness, the richness of the tone of the guitars, bass, drums, and keys there, and the vocals are tremendous as well. It's just commercial grade. And I'm glad that I had the chance to re-listen through this track as well. It's a pleasure. No complaints whatsoever in terms of that. We have track number 3, LUNA and the Gents, Farm Days. Spiciness with those leads there. Nice.
Sun is shining, what a beautiful day. Take off your shoes, let's drift away. Juicy grass and buzzy bees in the air. Daisies and ladybugs in my hair. Hey, hey, farm days. With your truck, feed the pigs and the chicks, and then follow me to pinch some cherries from the cherry tree. Hey, hey, farm days.
Another guitar lead.
Hey, hey, farm days.
I love the tension in those chords. How stop-starty they are.
Good old days, days, what out in a fall. Good old days, days, what out in a fall. Good old days, days, what out in a fall. Good old days, days, what out in a fall. Good old days, days, what out in a fall. Good old days, days, what out in a fall. Good old days, days, what out in a fall. Good old days, days, what out in a fall. Good old days, days, what out in a fall.
So that was another solid track, Farm Days. I think that the song is more celebrating the nostalgia or the times they had being on the farm, or maybe their current existence with it as well. It's for people who can sort of relate to it. It's interesting to have Perfect Day and then Je ne peux pas t'oublier, then this again. It's kind of like a very kind of like, pros con experience there, like positive, negative, positive. So I wonder what we're going to have for track 4. But the song itself, it's pleasant to talk about like the cherries and the cherry trees and the cows in the fields and everything like that. And it seems like a celebration of it. It's vocally like really engaging. A focal point of this track was definitely the kind of the vocals of the singer, sort of like you sing in various ways. The word escapes me for the style of music. This is unfamiliar with it. Boom, 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 ba boom, 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 boom. Like there's a very kind of satisfying loop to that bass line and chord progression there. I think that it's captured well within this. It adds a kind of danger to which is an interesting element considering the way we've sort of like what we've written the song about. I just feel like if it had been super positive or kind of major oriented, it might have been a little bit sort of cheesy. So I think they're trying a bit of edge there, especially to justify the various guitar leads and the double bass again. Maybe they add a bit of sort of like performance range to it, with the bass being a lot more sort of like low-key in the previous track. But I think, like, again, vocally, it's charming. There's some parts where we belt and explore our range. I like, from a production perspective, how we have the vocals in the center and then, like, the kind of farm, like, down, da, 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 down, bam, 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 down, da, 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 down. It's just very satisfying how it goes backwards and forwards. And it's not an all the time thing. It's a later in the track thing, I think, if I remember correctly. But just, that's more of a production thing. Honestly, it's great to not only be able to sing well, but also to know where to play stuff in the way that makes a track more interesting to listen to, I suppose. We structurally, though, we had, again, various guitar breaks, and I like the way they were played. They were more sort of like palate cleansers, I think. I think this was meant to be a sort of more of a low maintenance track at the halfway point of the EP. And I think that's kind of smart. Like, we got a lot of the context sort of that we wanted to discuss in those verse sections, and maybe we didn't want to elaborate on it further or overcomplicate it. I like the way that we started the song with those guitar takes. It's a freshness to the tone of them both from a production and a compositional perspective. There's like a sizzle from the slight sort of drive you have. There's like a dominant 7th chord I think they're using for like a chord progression there, and it's just a bam bam bam, and like a chromatic shift adds a bit of kind of tension and kind of spice to it. And we kind of further articulate and arpeggiate those to kind of make the chords more interesting as they kind of loop through them. I like that we're not just presenting it the same way, we're trying to sort of add sort of diversity there. We have the satisfying kind of loop. We'll go boom, 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 you know, and within the bass is in time with that, the double bass, because the bass is walking with those chord note accents there. But it knows to kind of follow along with the guitar, especially when the drums are also playing the kicks there with a sort of a sense of purpose. And I think, again, we have more, the lead guitars I mentioned there, like around the 42nd minute mark, for example, they're working with a mixture of bends and hammer-ons and pull-offs there, are a great sort of alternate to LUNA on the mic there. They're not very long either. I genuinely feel like we wanted to kind of go back to the hook line, and we knew we couldn't have just had vocals the entire time. And so we don't just kind of, again, take the listener for granted. We adjust our melodies there and explore different possibilities across the backing round parts. I like that we double track the guitars as well for a certain sense of stereo depth. Even at the start, the bass isn't sort of like trying to behave itself neatly with the guitars. They play a couple of things on the side of the stereo field. The bass kind of responds to that. I mean, call and response is a massive thing for LUNA and the Gents. And again, the chord note accents are a thing that the drums rely on as well. But there's like a shuffle, or dun 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 dun, working with the kicks, the crashes, the snares, the rides, that kind of focus. And I'm not sure if there's more sizzle with the guitar solo at 1 minute 20, but I think it kind of contrasts with the kind of like the clarity of some of the early guitar takes, and it's just a nice sort of further cleansing the palette. And I think the kind of drive you have adds a kind of a charisma to those chords that it might not have had before. That middle 8 that you have, and like the late sort of like half of the song there, where you have the vocals by themselves, again, is just clever because it acknowledges that we're already very comfortable with the drum, bass, guitar patterns, especially with the lack of keys that we've had in previous tracks, or the further elements we have with Perfect Days, which is far more compositionally complicated. We simply have a more minimal setup, and we're just kind of driving forward with that. And having that space without the percussion allows the vocals to float for us to go back into another chorus. And then we kind of have like a question chord at the end with the guitars. Is it like a 9th or something like that? Boom, 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 boom. Oh, it's a 6th. Never mind. It could be a 6th or a 13th. I literally have a piano over here now, so I can just check what the chord is. It's a G13 or something like that. And it's got a little bit of, and I think that's an organ at the end as well, which is kind of dope. So you got the organ vibrato at the end. I kind of wonder if I've maybe not heard the organ before it, or if that's just kind of a way of kind of signaling, hey, we do have the key player. He's still here. But yeah, kind of makes you wonder what's going to happen next. Thematically, I mentioned what I said about the kind of the minor leaning with some of the parts. Kind of, what is that? Kind of reminds me of Blues Brothers a little bit. Yeah, production-wise, it's on a similar level to Je ne peux pas t'oublier, and I'm looking forward to the EP when it releases on January 26th. It's going to sound fantastic, and they can all just play their instruments. They know what they're doing. We've got track number 4, Keep On Rockin'. Another quicker track. Quicker. Great to hear the harmonica return.
Keep on singing, keep on playing, keep on winning, keep on graying, keep on spending the day in my own special way. Keep on smiling, keep on crying, keep on shining, keep on trying, keep on spending the day in my own special way. Keep on rocking, rolling, shouting and trolling, keep on doing what I've done, and my boyfriend had gone. Rocking, rolling, shouting and trolling, keep on doing what I've done.
Great use of cutting that bar there.
Keep on shaking, keep on grooving, keep on taking, keep on spending the day in my own special way. Keep on partying, keep on linking, keep on prancing, keep on sinking, keep on spending the day in my own special way. Keep on rocking, rolling, shouting and trolling, keep on doing what I've done, and my boyfriend had gone. when my boyfriend had gone. Hey. Rockin', rollin', shining and trolling, keep on doing what I've done, and my boyfriend had gone. Rockin', rollin', shining and trolling, keep on doing what I've done. Keep on drinking, keep on smoking, keep on thinking, keep on talking, keep on spending the day in my own special way. Keep on swaying, keep on roving, keep on saying, keep on going, keep on spending the day in my own special way. Keep on rocking, rolling, shining and trolling, keep on doing what I've done, and my boyfriend had gone. Rocking, rolling, shining and trolling, doing what I've done, and my boyfriend had gone. Rocking, rolling, shining and trolling, keep on doing what I've done.
I feel like we're very
When my boyfriend had gone. Hey. Hey.
I'm not sure if I like this track as much as the others. I don't mean that it was written badly, it's more from a subjective perspective, I suppose, but I can still appreciate the musicality of it. Because that was Keep On Rockin'. Say that I'm not sure if I liked it as much is not because of the subject matter. I think it's fantastic that we're discussing sort of continuing to move on after someone leaves us, that we're just knowing we need to kind of put our chin up and keep our chin up and kind of push through the BS. You know, I like that. I think that it's a story that people will be able to get behind, and I'm kind of wondering if after Je ne peux pas t'oublier, should I say, and then Farm Days is kind of, we're getting back to our roots and then just kind of needing to continue to move forward regardless of what happens. I like that if that's the case, if that's the pattern we're going with this. And I think there's kind of like an edge or kind of like a contempt that we have on the microphone that works well with the subject matter. Again, we've proven in previous parts of the CP that we can sing. It's just more that here we have this kind of compelling archetype of someone who's just been burned and just doesn't want to continue to put their hand on the stove. I like the upper harmonies that we have kind of accenting bum, 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 bum. Maybe like thirds or something like that. I'm not sure. I have to really check my intervals, but yeah, to be fair, it was thirds. So that's good on my part. And thirds are a classic way of adding sort of depth to vocals without kind of overcomplicating a mix. You know, usually you're working with the existing triads within the composition. Those little parts where we say, hey, you know, like it's very kind of like, oh, I don't know, like, you know, you take notice of that, right? I mean, outside of the vocals, I think structurally it was good. I think that's kind of where for me I question the need to rely on the hook line and chorus as much as we did. I feel like, especially with that outro part, with the 3-minute 10 track, even though within that 2 to 4 minute sweet spot, where like, again, if it's less than 2 minutes, we might be missing some context. If it's over 4, that's when we're usually needing to sort of add several different parts to a track to kind of keep people interested in it. I just feel like I'd heard a lot of that hook, and it might have been cool to have had a different angle from like an alternate instrument. I do appreciate that the harmonica has returned there. It flourished within the arrangement. I love the kind of coloration of it within the piece. It had a nice sort of reverb tail on it as well, and it sat there wonderfully with the brushes, the kicks, and the syncopated guitar parts. And I think that it was leveled really neatly with the vocals, and then the keys, of course, coming into either sort of like corner responder at a kind of mid-range resonance there. And like from the rhythm section there, I just think, again, the syncopated guitar parts playing sort of a more low-key kind of like bar chords or kind of jazzy kind of parts, just it added a sort of an emotional or tonal complexity there that I think sort of matched what we were wanting to sort of communicate on the microphone to an extent. And I like that the keys weren't just there to sort of like play notes. They also had those held chords or held sort of parts we had in previous tracks, those whole tones or whole notes. We like had changes to the intensity of those keys. Sometimes they built up a little bit because they had room to sort of breathe. And it's like they kind of like build there, that tension there. There were those kind of like down, 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 those very kind of tense parts instrumentally in those haze sections where the guitar, bass, drums, and the keys, the organ, were there in sync with each other. And it just it sounded very kind of rock and roll. You know, it's just kind of, there was a heaviness to it, which you typically get from adding distorted elements on guitars. But when you stack things within the frequency spectrum, they build, and they're wonderful. But I do feel like, again, we could have potentially explored like more of the guitar elements, maybe had like a key solo or something like that. We could have had like another instrumental part, or maybe even had it as a sub lead behind one of the choruses near the end to sort of further enhance or sort of value it. Although I do also understand we need to have singles, and often singles typically will have the vocal focus. I get it. It's just a subjective thing on my part. And I think the minor leading thematically made a lot of sense. You know, we're not, even though we're trying to sort of focus on sort of keeping our chin up and stuff like that, we're struggling through something. So, you know, some of the notes that kind of, or chords that kind of hold there with an uncomfortable sort of like discord there are there to sort of be the drop before we take the plunge. Or the moment before we take the plunge, should I say. But yeah, aside from the sort of my comments on like the structure of it, ultimately, again, very well played, not a note out of place, and the studio production is also incredibly tight there. It's the same comments on the production studio side as previous ones. If you record with a similar setup and with similar musicians with similar equipment, you're typically just going to have a great time with it. No issues there at all. Because we have Doggy, track number 5. Oh, wait, there's an actual doggy.
Doggy, they always say you get what you deserve, but this time I think they're kidding me.
Okay.
Doggy, I know you're a fearful little guy, but please stop hiding behind every tree. Could you please listen to what I say? Say, and stop howling night and day. Day. You get me in trouble, all our neighbors around don't like your voice impressive sound. Oh doggy, doggy, I've never met a puppy like you. You don't care, but dog, we need to talk. Doggy, you seem to believe you're a wolf. You're a poodle, now let's go for a walk. When the full moon is lightening up the dark, you start howling as loud as you can. No one believes me, it's you making this noise. It even chased away my man.
I was kind of wondering how it was going to tie in to some of the stuff we discussed previously, but it also would have been kind of a bold choice to have had a song specifically about just a dog.
Oh doggy, oh doggy.
Well,
Could you please listen to what I say? Say, and stop howling night and day. Day. You get me in trouble, all our neighbors around don't like your voice impressive sound. Oh doggy, I say doggy. No, I say doggy.
so that was Doggy. That was indeed Doggy. So I think that's an interesting palette cleanser. I'm still not really sure how to pace Doggy or the CP. Like, I like a large sort of part of it. I think a lot of it's really good. I'm just sort of trying to find a kind of a connecting factor, but I suppose we'll find that as we go along. But Doggy, I think it literally is about a dog, a poodle that thinks it's a wolf, and it's kind of like tongue-in-cheek, and it's got a good sense of humor and nature to it. I think, again, with some of the heaviness of previous parts of this, it's just nice maybe to kind of have ourselves in our own sort of apartment, just trying to figure out how to deal with our pupper who thinks they're a wolf and barks or howls at the moon. That the woo-hoo, that part at the end there where we're kind of like playing alongside the harmonica there kind of elicits like it's kind of, we're trying to sound like the dog. And I just think making those sounds or sort of scatting in certain parts, beat, like it's just making noises that either relate to what we're discussing or sort of a pseudo instrumental thing are just fun decisions from a creative perspective. But I think in general there's like an earnest kind of playfulness throughout this entire thing. Like a lot of the tone of the vocals in this are sort of seemingly conversational. I think it makes sense considering we're sort of like looking at the puppy from all angles. Now there's a major turn at a lot of these melodies there that kind of infers that even if there's like a downside or a minor quotient, we're not terribly unhappy with it. And I think DBDBD kind of like lets us know, hey, we're kind of trying to work through this healthily. We have these problems, we're just trying to sort of be kind of stoic about it, I suppose. I like the Europoodle part there. It's just wonderfully charismatic with the tone of it. It's got a kind of sense of whimsy about it that I think is important when we're trying to to not be too serious about something. So again, the charisma is apparent. In terms of the instrumental backing itself, similar quality to what we've had throughout the entirety of this EP thus far. You know, the drums have this kind of dum 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 kind of jazzy kind of swing feel to it there. That's very quick. It's got a pull to it. You know, we're kind of like rushing through our feelings on this, but it's tight with the performance. You know, a great sense of pace to it, like a metronome. We kind of like are comfortable working the brushes with the snares and stuff like that with the chord note pulse, and the bass keeps in time with it really eloquently, and it navigates the kind of complexity of what's going on harmonically really adeptly, because the guitars are playing some complicated chords there, and they can be tricky to know exactly what notes to work with, especially if you are not just rolling with the root notes. But again, like I think the organ, when it comes in around the 30-second mark, for example, it kind of rounds out maybe the ambiguity that you might be sort of like feeling ambiguity about where the actual instrumental parts are going. It adds a sense of kind of like direction to it that allows us to kind of pull into the bridge part and then go back into the chorus. I like that. And I think, again, with the kind of classic crescendo to some of the organ takes before the old doggy part, you know, the hook line being sort of like reimbursed, there are various different ways that we kind of like stack and segment this piece, and I like the variety structurally. It's also just to highlight that we just clearly can play our instruments well and sort of like know to add enough, again, like diversity within it, which I feel, again, is something that we kind of, for the most part, we've had there. There's like these kind of like finicky guitar riffs that, again, showcase our ability to play the strings really neatly without overplaying and finding space for it. And we have one of those sort of question chords at the end there, which is very sort of like symbolic of the genre, with the organ kind of backing it up there. And it kind of makes us wonder what's going to happen next. I think there's also a harmonica solo around like the 2-minute 25 mark, if I'm not mistaken. And it's just explores its range really like happily, like verily. It's just nice to have vibrato and little warbles on it, and to sort of like be able to have that space underneath the you know, those parts there. It's great to have a lead element introduced earlier, have more room to breathe in the later stages to kind of round it out. Like it goes away from the main sort of like hoo part, but then it comes into it rhythmically in unison other times, and it plays with the listener's expectations. But yeah, honestly, I think that Doggy is probably one of my favorite tracks off of this album. I like it singular as a concept, and while I wasn't expecting to have it at this placement, I also don't know where else you'd place it in the EP. Then again, it being a part one makes a bit more sense. But honestly, just again, the production as well is sensational. Thematically, I just think, the chord choices, the styling is more sort of indicative of the kind of day in the life of kind of approach we're going through here. It's just it's not melancholic, but it's like we're just kind of accepting whatever comes our way and making the most of the dice we're dealt. I think it's cool. We've got the long version of Je ne peux pas t'oublier. This is the long version that's going to be released exclusively with the EP as I understand it on the 26th of January. So let's do it. What are they going to add to this? The long version.
Même si je l'essayais. Mon cœur est près de toi, si près de toi. Oui, je dois m'en aller, même si je voulais rester. Quand même, je t'aime très fort, je t'aime très fort. Non, je ne peux pas t'oublier, même si je l'essayais. Mon cœur est près de toi, si près de toi.
The production is fantastic.
Est-ce que tu crois que je puisse t'oublier? Non, je ne peux pas, mais je dois m'en aller.
I love that note there. So dreamy.
Non, je ne peux pas t'oublier, même si je l'essayais. Mon cœur est près de toi, si près de toi. Mon cœur est près de toi, si près de toi. Non, je ne peux pas t'oublier. Non, je ne peux pas. Non, je ne peux pas t'oublier. Non, je ne peux pas. Oh, oh, oh. Non, 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 je ne peux pas t'oublier. Non, 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 je ne peux pas. Non, 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 je ne peux pas t'oublier. Non, 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 je ne peux pas.
Good. I love it. Okay, So I'm not always the most supportive of longer versions of songs when I feel like they've ended quite well. But if we're going to talk about Je ne peux pas t'oublier, the long version, as opposed to the track 2 for today, I do prefer this version. So I've already given my thoughts on the original radio edit. That's the, again, track 2, the one we heard earlier, that I reviewed twice now. So I'm going to talk about specifically the last part of the song, the last 2 minutes of it. I think that it is fantastic to just kind of have that Bildungsroman-esque kind of moment, that foundational kind of thing of going, actually, no, I don't actually have to remember you. I can't forget you, should I say. I shouldn't have to forget you. You are part of my life. You are part of the tapestry of my existence. And I don't want to do that. And they don't want to sort of drown in that depression, that state there. They want to come up from that and kind of find a way to build a future for themselves. And I'm not entirely sure where we're going, which I assume will probably be the part 2 of this EP titled Second Life. But what I want to sort of emphasize here is that I think it's a fantastic, sensible turn from a songwriting and arrangement perspective. I liked that we, again, had further elevated vocals, that we kind of had a change of pace with the way we expressed things, a little more sort of staccato, a bit more bouncy, a little more sort of like upbeat. Not overzealous, but nonetheless still in a way that makes sense from a vocal perspective. But also, I like that we had the keys have a solo section. I like that we had the guitars have a solo section. I like that we let them have half of it. And the reason I appreciate that is because when you've got musicians as talented as the people in LUNA and the Gents, they are screaming for a place to kind of show themselves off. They have been wonderfully supportive of LUNA specifically, I assume. And so even though, to be fair, we've had various guitar solos, just having the keys come in there and kind of riff off on their right hand and sort of work within the triads and notes there and kind of explore and maybe even improvise, if not improvise, definitely solo. Even on the fade out there, with the fade out having the entire band in unison working together, just a wonderful thing. It's almost like the band was celebrating the fact that LUNA had come to that realization. So in essence, I just think it's a beautiful ending to it. It completely justifies its existence. And I also just want to mention here that, like, I think that the production of this track specifically is exquisite. They did it very, very well on this. And I'm very happy as a reviewer to hear the song, knowing that the rest of the EP is going to sound as good as this upon release. And I'm not glazing for the sake of it. I think it's fantastic. But we're going to talk about this EP more in the conclusion. Because welcome to the conclusion of our review of this EP from an act named LUNA the Gents, titled Second Life Part 1. It is an EP review. There, sorry for booping the mic. I'm still getting used to reviewing after a week or two off. In this section, I'm going to be giving my overall thoughts on this EP. I'm not really talking about specific tracks, really, as I've given individual conclusions for those. This is mainly sort of oriented around my thoughts on it overall, so there'll be analysis plus also any sort of applicable constructive critique, and then sort of my final thoughts from a journalistic perspective. But first of all, what do we think this EP is about? I think this EP is about someone who has having a fantastic time and then things just fell apart. They've been trying to get on with their life and doing the best they can to find themselves, but they're just having a rough time of it. There's this person that's no longer there, and they just can't cope with that. And I think at the end, we go back after DOGGY and looking at our life and our situation there, keep on rocking, sort of having to move through, and with all the punches coming our way, roll with the punches. We've got Je ne peux pas t'oublier, the full version, where we inevitably come to this point where we're just trying to accept who we are in our situation and kind of rise above it. And I think that's a wonderful way to end an EP. I was not sure going into it what we were going to do to further enhance that, whether it was going to be a twist and a tail or additional instrumental parts. And thankfully we got both, but I adore it. I think for the most part, this review has been quite positive, and ultimately I just think there's only one real point, I think, Keep On Rocking, if not Farm Days. There's one track where I discussed the structure of it, but again, vocally phenomenal on pipes. I loved our vocal technique. Head and chest voice was fantastic, very comfortable on the microphone, expressive. At some points we sort of like spoke. I said, hey, we kind of, when we was talking to the doggy, we kind of spoke like how we might talk to a doggy about like how they think they're a wolf, but they're not. There's like a playfulness. Sometimes we laugh there. It's incredibly human. And I just like the authenticity there. We're not trying to sing, we're trying to sort of perform. And I like that We also had like call and responses of various harmonies there. I think the whole band maybe did some backing vocals on certain parts there. But then we also knew to sort of keep things relatively like less kind of like complicated with songs like, again, Je ne pas t'oublier, which peux pas t'oublier, which about more sort of ourselves kind of coming to terms with our losing someone. It's our sort of like a time in the lounge jazz bar, kind of like singing about the loss of ours and then kind of drowning in that. It makes me happy that they start to swim. But ultimately, yeah, just our expression's on point. It's very sort of like believable, and I think there's going to be an audience for the vast majority of stuff in here. And I think you need to listen through the EP in its entirety for it to kind of make sense. And I'm glad that I did. Structurally, most of these tracks were 2 to 4 minutes there with verses and choruses and occasional bridges, and there were harmonica solos and guitar solos as well, and little sort of like drum breaks, some middle eights for the vocals occasionally. And then we had the big kind of finish with, again, the longer version of track 6 there, where we had the keys coming for their own solo section as well. And so I like that we had repetitions of hook lines for the most part in a way that I thought was effective. Occasionally, I thought we could have added more behind the scenes, but then that's only because I've heard them put more behind the scenes. So I just got a bit greedy at that point on my part. We had a variety of different feels where overall the technical proficiency was there. The drums were fantastic, a mixture of different sort of hi-hat and cymbal grooves there with straight sort of triplet sort of like patterns such as again Je ne peux pas t'oublier, or we had sort of swing parts with like Doggy Keep On Rockin', if I'm mistaken there, kind of like, or at least Farm Days there. So we're comfortable with our sort of swing flow, comfortable with our straight eights or with triplets, comfortable across the kit. There was a really cool drum fill as well in the longer version there where we went from the left side to the right side of the stereo field there, which is just great from a panning perspective. But it was also nice to hear the drums be a bit more sort of forthcoming, especially in a position where we had a lot of the other instruments being able to sort of shine as well. But yeah, we were very comfortable with the hi-hat patterns there, little bits of finesse with the 16th parts there, but we were also very supportive, whether it was like with Perfect Day, should I say there, with the snare patterns, like the choo-choo train there, the kind of 16th note patterns there. We knew when to sort of be slower with the chord note accents. Other points we kind of roll with the eights there, but the drums were just incredibly tight for the most part, if not the entire time. The bass, I think it was typically the double bass, if not electric bass occasionally, but there's this wonderful earthy tone to it. It suited the jazzy stylings of a lot of these pieces, with as well as the country parts of other ones and sort of more balladesque formats of others, and it never betrayed the feel or aesthetic that was presented by any of the guitar, key, or harmonic patterns there. The bass knew how to be a chameleon and sort of either roll with the kicks, chord notes, or to explore the fretboard a bit more when it had the chance with the extensions and the chord progressions, but never overcomplicated. It was wonderful. They really know their instrument, covered the low and low mids really neatly. I liked the kind of the glow to them. I thought they had a wonderful kind of like sense of life to them, whether we were arpeggiating certain chord progressions or doing syncopated strummed off beats or like exploring more complicated arpeggiated or sort of like later solo sections there. Kind of gritty, kind of overdriven bends there, a mixture of hammer-ons and pull-off parts. There are various solo sections across these, like Farm Days had a few of them. Just these breaks were awesome. I could be confused because there's a song with a lot of harmonica parts and there was a song with a lot of guitar parts there. The harmonica is tremendous too. Lots of bluesy phrasings in that, which I think worked well with the country elements there, but also just an individual sort of unique texture that was well received, I think, in Keep On Rockin' as well as Perfect Day. And even though it had a lot of pep and zest to it, it never felt like too much there. I think part of it was the positioning in the frequency spectrum from an arrangement perspective, where you'd have the guitars kind of feeding off of the harmonica and other parts, then I kind of go to and fro, and it's just lovely. The keys there, typically organs if I'm not mistaken there, were just wonderful and vivacious. They had a nice sort of vibrato to them, like a quietness kind of, some of them times they played sort of 13th chords or kind of question parts, and I think there were several songs where those question chords on the end there that kind of sounded a bit uncertain or where we didn't necessarily know where we were going to go next, but they were lovely to listen to there. And when we did get our solo section and Je ne peux pas t'oublier, the longer version there, we made the most of it, even on the fade out there. You know, it was just nice for them to have their time to shine after being so supportive of everything else within the mix. And so you have those sort of main components, unless I'm missing something. Harmonically, thematically, a lot of this was extensions, but some of it was very sort of more sort of triad based and minors and majors. And I think Doggy was quite complicated there with some of the chords and sort of chromatics there. I think Perfect Day had like a key change at the end, which was kind of cool as well. We're just very comfortable with the sort of main motif and kind of allowing it to go up a stage there and be a bit more sort of vibrant. And we had some sort of occasional chromaticism with some of the sort of like lead phrasing, although it was usually either for like the dreaminess of the initial solo of Je ne peux pas, or again the harmonica rolling off with the blues scale. Like we were very sort of like well behaved and conservative a lot of time outside of the modulation, the sort of jazzy elements there, because we still wanted to make it catchy and not take too much attention away from the vocalist. But just, yeah, a great sort of wholesome, earthy feeling to Proceedings that was very satisfying to listen to. And I just, like there were, again, each track had its own sort of identity with really sort of solid instrumental performances without a note out of place. It was just vibrant. Studio recording, mixing, and mastering was wonderful as well. Like, again, I know I mentioned the digital artificing of Perfect Day. I think that was just the video itself. I think the actual track, it's going to sound amazing. Or should I say the album rather, especially considering like the quality of a lot of the later parts and including the longer version there. It just sounds commercial grade. The vocals, guitar, bass, drums, harmonica, keys, the organs, etc. All of that was nice and full-bodied. It was vivacious. There were no weird resonant frequencies in the frequency spectrum. The music surrounded you in the headphones. You'd have some vocals go here and then backing vocals to the side and stuff like that. The guitar takes were double tracked and you could hear each of the individual sort of components kind of rolling along. The bass had like a kind of like a body to it, but like presence without being overwhelming. The drums had kind of like a kick to them, excuse the pun, without being too like sidechained. It sounded like a live performance. They could just all play their instruments. It wasn't over-processed or sort of redone in post. And the singer could clearly sing. And again, there was dynamic range. There were some pauses sometimes. And there was a fade out automation at the end and some of the tracks. So like some tracks faded out in general. It was just incredible. Like the studio production in general was fantastic, and it was nice to know what that pumping to the bus compression and limiting was handled. So ultimately, just a really satisfying listen through this EP or the tracks within this EP. In terms of applicable constructive critique, aside from this, again, that the one track where I thought we could have had additional sort of like lead layers behind it because of like a lot of the hook line being present, I think it's wonderfully handled. And I feel like a lot of it, anything further, is going to be purely subjective. And I think it'll just depend on how part 2 goes. Part 1, though, of this, Second Life Part 1 is really promising. And I think it makes sense for them to put out an EP at this point, considering the quality of what they're, again, releasing. From a general listener's perspective, I feel like I've listened and learned more about the musicians involved. I think Doggy was kind of an interesting turn because I like the sense of humor behind that. I like that we're talking maybe about our life, and then we're kind of looking at like another creature within our life and kind of discussing them and kind of looking outside ourselves as opposed to a nostalgia for how things used to be. And we're kind of appreciating what we have in our life and trying to find joy in that, despite how frustrating it can be occasionally. Ultimately, I think it's just again, I'm glad to be revisiting LUNA and the Gents. I think they're fantastic musicians. I'm going to stop glazing them now. So thank you for watching my review of this EP from an act named LUNA and the Gents, titled Second Life Part 1. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please go show them some love via the various social medias and their YouTube page. And stay cool and stay safe. And please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as need the help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world. A gentle reminder that this EP releases on the day this video comes out. So if you want to check out the EP in full, go check out the links in the description. And stay cool, Shredders. Spiderhands out.